Hi everyone, I just made a snowflake cowl on my knitting machine and I'm going to show you how you can do it too. For this project, I'm using the Singer Mod.700 knitting machine, TAM 3-ply astracryl, which is an acrylic fingering weight yarn, punch card number 16, which is the snowflake motif, and for the borders and seaming, we'll need a size 4 circular knitting needle, crochet hook, and a tapestry needle. Here's the yarn that we're going to be using today, in a light color and a dark color. I've got waste yarn on the machine right now and I've got 96 stitches in work. We're going to use punch card number 16. We've got the A arrow, going to point that down into the punch card slot and roll it through so that we can connect to the back. Make sure you connect it in this way or whatever way that your knitting machine manual says to do it. And usually I would roll this down to where it says row number 1, where row number 1 is just visible above the punch card line. I didn't do that this time because it doesn't really matter where my pattern begins and ends. We're going to set that little switch to the circle setting. We've got the carriage on stockinette stitch setting and tension number 9. The next thing we need to do is thread the yarn. I'm using the light colored yarn in feeder number 1. I'm going to set the row counter to 0s and knit 1 row to the right. Now we need to thread the dark color yarn. I'm going to do that in yarn feeder 2 and set the dial to Fair Isle. We're also going to flip that little punch card switch to triangle. And now we can start knitting. For those of you who don't know, I got this knitting machine from a thrift store a couple months ago. And let me tell you, this is so much fun, but it also does eat up a lot of yarn very quickly. So I do also find some pretty good yarn deals at my local thrift store. The clips I'm using are just chip bag clips. They have a magnet on, the inside, and they're kind of heavy duty, so they have just enough weight so that it prevents the edges from being all floppy, which also helps prevent dropping stitches at the edge. So every few inches I move them up. We're going to just keep knitting back and forth until we get to row 256. Now that is also because I'm going to do a slanted edge on this cowl. I think it just makes it fit around the wearer's neck a little bit better, but the slanted edge is totally optional. The total number of rows we're going to be knitting is 280 rows, and that gave me a 36-inch cowl. But at row 256 is when I'm going to start the slanted edge. Now that my cast-on comb has hit the floor, I need to move the claw weights up. All right, we're at row 256, and I'm going to use this knitting transfer tool to bind off 8 stitches every other row. And I think next time I do this, I'm going to use a chain, just a simple chain bind off on the edge that is opposite of my carriage. I think I'm going to do that instead of the way that I'm binding off right now. So just bind off 8 stitches every other row, and that is what will give you the slanted edge on this cowl. And like I said, it's totally optional. I think it just makes it fit around the neck a little bit nicer and a little bit snugger, but you don't have to have the slanted edge for this cowl. I did have to deal with a drop stitch, so it took a few extra minutes. Now we need to seam the edge, the slanted edge, to the long edge of the cowl. I'm going to take the slanted edge and fold it and the opposite bottom corner, and I'm going to bring it up to the top of the slanted edge. And then I'm going to take a couple removable stitch markers and just pin it in place where I think it needs to be seamed. When I'm ready to seam it, I will be seaming the back of it, but this is just to get it placed correctly. We also need to bind off the unfinished edge. This would be the edge that we started with the waste yarn on the knitting machine. So I'm just going to transfer all of those stitches to a knitting needle and then use a crochet hook to do a quick chain bind off across that entire edge. Here with the crochet hook, we'll do a quick bind off. And this chain bind off gives us a really sturdy edge. So I like this bind off. Next, we're going to thread the tapestry needle and seam that edge. I guess something happened to my video, but what it doesn't show is that I took my knitting needle and I picked up stitches all around the longest edge of the cowl, the bottom of the cowl, to create a 2x2 ribbed border. I also did a mitered corner, and I will link that in a different video, but I did a mitered corner at the center bottom of the cowl. And now I'm just binding off all stitches in pattern. And all in all, this project took a little under 3 hours, and I had what I consider to be a pretty fun gift for someone. It doesn't take a lot of time, and it was pretty fun to make. Let me know in the comments if you decide to give this a try, and let me know how it turns out for you. Thanks for watching.